Thank you very much. I said it about myself. So I'm here to talk about Gutenberg, which is a platform we developed at University of Oxford in order to deliver our training material. Um, the kind of background, this is going back before I was at the University of Oxford of what was the motivation behind making Gutenberg. And the idea was that the sort of existing solutions, and you've just seen one of the existing solutions, and I don't really want to dwell too much on comparisons, but these are static websites. They're not, dynamic websites. So you don't have events and a database hooked to them, up to them, and stuff like that. They're designed to kind of present markdown material, as it is in the files. And so there's no interactivity between like the people presenting the courses and the people running the courses and using your students on the courses, as well as there's just kind of a little bit of a there's an approval process to kind of get onto these. You have to kind of get onto a central repository, whereas ours is more of a distributed thing. If you want to host our website and you want to point it to any material that you've written yourself or that someone else has written, or you want to use our training material, or you want to fork our training material and change it slightly, that's all extremely easy to do with just a couple of lines of config YAML changed. So that was the goal. It was funded initially as part of the Universe HPC project, with a bunch of other. It was one of many things like that was funded by that project in terms of enhancing sort of the kind of overall goal of that was to kind of introduce the basic skills for HPC so that researchers were ready when they had projects that required HPC. They were ready to to tackle them. But this project wrapped up January or so of this year, but it's Gutenberg's being continually funded by a project called Drift, which I did have a slide for, but I massively mauled my slides when uploading them to the to the portal, so it's gone now. What is it? I'm not going to really spend very much time talking about the actual implementation or anything of it. And we're really going to be talking about it from the point of view of users of the site, and to kind of hopefully give you guys an idea of what you can get out of it, if you wanted to adopt it yourselves. But it is a Next.js React site. So there's a so there's Next. If you've not been familiar with Next.js, it's all one repo, but it does split the code base into the server side, which you don't have like Node or whatever, and then it's the browser code. And we hooked up with CRUD to Postgres database that stores all the kind of courses and events that you're running, users, their problem solutions, their comment threads, like from a forum kind of point of view in there. And then the kind of extra little twist is that it pulls content down from markdown repositories, similar to how carpentries are set up, where they've got, you write your courses in markdown, and the web server will, point to those courses and download them, and then that's used to build the website when at runtime. So the clicker has stopped working. Unfortunately. There we go. And there are links. I wasn't smart enough to make QR codes. The main one is the one on the bottom, which is linked to our deployment of it, train.rse.oxstack.org. The GitHub, it's all FOSS, so you can find the GitHub for this at Oxford RSE/Gutenberg. The docs, it has Jekyll docs at that link, or you can find them from the GitHub. So if you want to go to one of these things, take a picture. The material we present, we like run courses on, is all stored at this repo, at part of the Universe HPC thing. But I want to emphasize that Gutenberg is content agnostic. You can point it to any single repo, and it will any single Git repo, doesn't even have to be GitHub, and it will be able to run. You'll be able to run courses on that material, and which gives us a really high velocity. We get feedback from students, and we're able to update the course material instantly, and that'll be reflected on the live site. So the idea for today is I'm going to look at the website from the point of view of kind of three different people. One is someone who's writing a course, like you've got some kind of knowledge you want to impart on people. Someone who's a student who's on a course, what does that experience kind of look like? And one for kind of part three is for more of if you wanted to host an event, how does that look like? How do you go about doing that? And, how do you deploy your own version of that? But again, if you want to see that, then the docs are there and they should be reasonable. I'm going to go to the site in a second, but I just wanted to point out if you go to train.rse, if you go to this website here, this is what you'll see, and there's a special RSECon 2025 event, so you can filter for that if you want. So you can go, if you want to see what it looks like from a student's point of view, you can go, you can enroll. The enrollment key, when you click it, you'll see a dialog like this. and the enrollment key is RSEcon25, all lowercase. So if you are interested in having a play around while I'm chatting, if you're bored of me, then you can enroll onto this event and have a look at what it would look like. It's just a clone of an existing training event. It's nothing special put together. It's just something, a training event that we did a few weeks ago. So if you are interested in that, then go for it. But so I'm going to come back to the website in a little bit. But for part one, I'm just going to talk through it because it's not visually appealing to look at. How do you write? Okay, the slides got very messed up with OpenOffice, so I apologize if there's any kind of formatting errors. You're a content creator, you want to do it in Markdown. Okay, you design your course in Markdown, you write it. It's not quite plain Markdown, which we'll get to in a second. And then you define any metadata, which again, I'm going to keep saying we're going to get back to that, but we are going to get back to what exactly you need to put in the metadata in order to have it, in order to have the React website able to properly present it. And it's not very strenuous. So yeah, it's just Markdown, same as anything else. We render it with React Markdown, but we have custom. So what React Markdown does is it'll change like a Markdown title, like the double hash you've got for a title there, into a title element in HTML. But we overwrite, I think, every single thing. So the bullet pointed list that you can see there will become a bunch of LI elements, but we overwrite every single one of them. So we've got like really, really custom behavior for every single Markdown element. Everything you'd expect to work works. Syntax highlighting, copy open blocks, math rendering, multimedia. If you want to embed videos, if you want to embed slides, like if you want to have like a slideshow as part of your material, that's completely fine and works completely fine. If you want to embed YouTube videos of lectures, maybe that's completely fine. And almost the entire site as well is Markdown aware. So you can put Markdown on almost any part of the site and it'll be rendered using the same kind of logic. There's a few, obviously we overwrite normal elements as well, but there's also a few custom elements. The big two, so I'm really worried to put too much in, so I'm going to go really fast. And then hopefully we can offer a break at the end if we go too fast. So one of the big two is challenges. So if you want to embed, these are kind of done as a problem solution kind of setup. And they're done with a custom directive, which you can see in the background there of the Markdown. A custom directive like that, and then like that for the solution. And that's how that appears. So you can look at the solution if you want to, as well as it's hidden behind this thing here. We'll see it on the live site, I think, is you can submit your solution to that as well when you're going through the course. And the other one is custom callouts, which I ripped off directly from GitHub. GitHub, if you don't already know, GitHub comments are rendered with Markdown as well. So if you're familiar with that, you'll be familiar with writing courses, but they've got custom callouts in GitHub. I think we've got a better syntax, to be honest. The GitHub syntax is horrible, but the visual look is the same, and it just lets you make your lessons look a bit more appealing. And so there's other kind of custom directives, but those are the big two. Any material that you want to present is done in a hierarchy, like a 3-tier hierarchy. We call them theme, course, section. And so theme, these are all the current themes, or most of the current themes that are in our material. So, you might have a course on MPI, which would fit into the high performance computing theme. This is what happens when you click on a theme, you get the courses that are in that theme. So in the software architecture and design theme here, you can see we have 3 courses on procedural, book, and functional. And if you click on one of them, you get down to, so this is the course page, and you can see what sections are in there. So you can see there's multiple tracks here. You can follow the C++ track or the Python track, and each of those, if you go to one of them, this is our lowest tier of material, and this is a big section. So this is kind of similar to what you get on this is a single kind of page on the site that you can kind of work through. The other part of writing lessons, so you've got all your Markdown, you know exactly what we want to teach your students, and you've written a Markdown file, or a series of Markdown files, or a gigantic folder filled with dozens of Markdown files that are all complicatedly interconnected. Then what else you need to do? And the answer is you need to write this front matter to YAML. And this is used to kind of define, in the hierarchy, you kind of define what things come below it, but to add a bunch of useful metadata, learning outcomes, which is something that came from a hackathon. Someone suggested, obviously, we need learning outcomes. It's a great idea. So you put learning outcomes in there. One of the big motivations was attributions. So wherever you take open source courses from, you can attribute back to the thing, and then all that is, you can have as many as you like. You add URLs, logos, and as well as pros to explain where it came from, and that way we're preserving. So we've taken some courses from carpentries. A lot of courses are written for the University of UC project directly. A lot of courses are written by Oxford internally for our training modules, and you can attribute, to the authors and the organizations that own the original thing. So it's nice to be able to do that. So yeah, that's attributions. I forgot I did broke these down separately, but that's what they appear like on the website. This course was taken from the carpentries, or adapt. It's always adapted from. There's nothing that we lifted directly. We've always changed them to more fit our sort of code and stuff like that. And as with every single thing you see here, this is available at sort of like all levels. You can attribute themes, courses, sections, and you can provide, the same, every single thing here. Learning outcomes can go in a course, can go in a theme, whatever you want to do. They're rendered just, the learning outcomes are rendered just as a collapsible list. I have future plans for these and trying to build, which I'll maybe talk about a little bit later, and trying to build sort of a more dynamic sort of learning pathways system where people can kind of say what things they're interested in learning, and it builds forth rather than having a course which is structured. First, you're going to learn this, then that. Instead, it's going to say, here's the kind of things you need to explore if you want to understand this thing that you're interested in. So learning outcomes would be great for that. This is one of the most fun ones. We'll see the true magic of this when I go to the website. But you define dependencies. Any single piece of Markdown, you can say this depends on another piece of Markdown in any part of the site. And what this lets you do is kind of say, oh, you want to learn this? It'd probably be useful if you knew Bash, or it'd probably be useful if you knew VS Code, or if you knew Slurm, or whatever. So you can link any list to any number of links as well as you like. And these are interpreted on the site as, at a complete basic level, when you're on a page, you get forwards and backwards links to things which depend on this and things which this depends on. And again, this can be just like every other piece of metadata. This goes at every single sort of level of the material. You also define, this is how you define these multiple tracks here. This is just a list. I can't point it. I don't know why I thought I could point at the screen over there and you'd see it. But if you want to define just a list of things that you do in order in this course, then that would appear as a single list here. But if you want to have, you can have as many of these different sort of things for like, things that fit under a common branch. And these are these are currently like auto named by tags, but I'm wanting to change that to be manually named as well. So that would be useful. Yeah, some of the more obvious ones, you name pages. This page here is called procedural programming. And so that comes under the name field and you can tag things, so people can find them more easily. If they want to find courses through the SnakeMake or HPC or C++, they can do that. We've got some tools to help you out. Sorry, absolutely no idea how quick I'm going. We've got some tools to help you out, so that to make sure the stuff that the pull requests you submit are going to render properly. So we lint the markdown for you, very standard. We lint the front matters metadata YAML for you as well, to make sure there's no errors in that, which would be hard to pick up on because the course material repository is purely storing like the markdown. So it'd be hard to pick up errors on the YAML because it's not actually trying to parse this in any way. So we've got CI to do that. We've got CI to lint Python code blocks. So if you put Python code in there, it'll be linted as well as part of like your CI job. I did it at a time, also lint the C++ code, but I realized it's completely pointless because you end up with either ignoring so many rules, because things like not inside a main block, like you don't want to have to put a main block every time you're putting C++ code into a lesson. So it's hard. So it's not necessarily giving up, but it is hard to do non-interpreted languages. Yeah, and I also did at one point run the Python code to check the output, but that's kind of pointless as well. We check links as well, but that's checked on the Next.js site, not on the kind of material repo, purely because we need to actually build the website to make sure the internal links are correct. So there's a custom link check for that as well, which is much better than any one that I've seen that you can see here on the bottom. We're managing to get the whole web had like 15,000 links, we're managing to get almost 15,000 of them because they're repeats and stuff like that. Just a whole custom, I never rejoined as well, so it's a bit of fun to have a link check of it. Doesn't work. So I'm going to switch over to the website now, hopefully, to kind of look at what it would look like for students. Well, now apparently it doesn't work, so that's why I was doing that. So I'm very privileged to go wrong. Right. If you're a student and you come to our website, what can you do? And one of the first things you can do is you can look at the training materials. You can see those themes I was talking about. You can see what courses are on those themes you want to learn about Bash. you can go and you can go to a section and start working through it. These depends on things like you easily skip through. You can see through down, if there's challenges to complete, there's a challenge here, so you can do that or not. There is there's no back button on this mouse. You can also search material. We got in my very proud of this search, very advanced systematic search. You want to learn about testing, you can search for testing. You can this page you'll see when I click it why this has been removed from the kind of main way of displaying this. Just down to accessibility, just very unaccessible. But this is the full map of material. You can see each of these lines with one of those depends on, so you can see kind of like graphically that you might want to do desktop or architecture before you do like the integration with Docker. You might want to learn how to do Python packaging before you learn how to do containerization, etc., etc. And so that's another thing that students can do. But the main thing and the main reason why it differs from other sites is that we can use it as I can see how many people have come on here. Not very many. One person. So this is the other part, is events. So you can come into when we host sort of training events, and you can see them here. These are all the events we've ran with Gutenberg. You can filter them, etc. And when you're on one of them, so let's just say we're on this one, then you can follow through the kind of material. You can see your progress. You can see I completed one of the challenges earlier, so I can see that I finished that kind of section. Any place you kind of go to will also, you'll notice these have changed color because these are now, the next thing in the events. Let's go to that sidebar. So now we're following along with events. And now that this one you can see, we can go to the next one, the event, or also, the next material logically as well. And you can kind of see the information here that was being put in by the host. I've redacted some of it here, but we normally put things like Zoom links or whatever in here, timing, like lecture theaters and stuff like that. And one of the last things you can do is that if you've got a problem with some material, you can start a forum thread, sort of live into forum thread, live into here. That is a bug, but this is now here for anyone also, and it can reply to it. This is a markdown enabled, so you can do if I can type, like something like that, and that'll render just like the entire rest of the site is all just rendered the same sort of markdown content kind of thing. And of course, people you can say it's been resolved. You can mark this as I'm happy with the solution here, and you can delete. So that we'll get on to this in a second for organizers. That might be useful for organizers. Yes, I think I'll go back to the slides, just make sure that I covered everything I want to cover. Yep, you can look at that horrible diagram, you can read material. If you want to make stars, you can. We've got light mode as well, apparently, in that screenshot it's in light mode. So these courses are kind of ideas that they're structured events which take place at certain times and certain places, and certain materials supposed to be covered on each of those times and places. And track your progress through them and follow along. And so when we deliver material, it tends to be a combination of lectures and working through the markdown. So we'll give kind of introductory lectures on, the kind of concepts involved and why you should care, and then more practical lessons where they follow through with their markdown material. So yeah, you can look at the course and yeah. I didn't do that one, but that's when you get the calendar. I don't know if there's any on the page. I'll just get in the sidebar. That's the easiest way to do it. Yeah, so you can say, okay, you can paste your solution in here. If you want, you can rate it difficulty, you can write feedback, and then you can edit it and decide you want to yeah, and you can, if you go to your profile page as well, you can kind of see your progress through all the courses you're on. You can also switch event. If you've been on multiple training courses, you can flip between them, and that kind of thing. Sorry, I have a different view here because I could like. So yeah, leave comments if that's how you do the comment. Yeah, the kind of one thing we want to do is we want to have a more sort of the people currently you're either on a course or you're just looking at static material, and we'd like to introduce some of the more dynamic stuff to people that are not on a course. So the idea of you being able to say, where you are in your kind of career or your education, or whatever, and where you'd like to be, and for us to kind of point you to the right places to solve that. And so that should be coming soon as part of some of the grants that we're currently on. Yeah. So the course organizers, I'm going to go to the staging website instead of production for this one. So what can course organizers do? Create events, duplicate events. If you want to rerun an event, you just change the date and it'll shift all the dates. That's quite handy. So you want to rerun that introduction to C++ one, great, you've done it. Once you've created an event, you can give it a title, give it enrollment keys, text to enroll, like text that tells you, I don't know, you put summary information that's what appears on the front page, and likewise, this is the content field is again, these are all marked on the content field is what kind of appeared when I went to that event page earlier. And so that makes the event, and then events are made up of these things we call groups. So these are going to be empty, but this is it's so easy to do. So you go here and you say you want to teach, I don't know what I want to teach, but you want to teach procedure programming. So you go, okay, I want to teach, and there you go. That's got. Though that material will now automatically will guide them through it when you're clicking those next thing button. The material that will just automatically guide through them. It'll appear in the sidebar. It'll also have told them these problems are required to be completed, etc., etc. So that's what making an event like. You track the other kind of half of it, back to the main site for this, is that you can kind of track students' progress. So if you come down to this monstrous table down here, you can see how students have been completing stuff. You can look at, what they gave for their things, which is often in a page blank. But oftentimes there's feedback that this was confusing or it was too difficult. And you kind of there's a way for you to summarize this as well to get the kind of average things. You also get these comments, all the comments appear here as well. You can reply to them there. You can go to the where it's embedded, etc., etc. The same things. And once they're resolved, they get minimized down to this one as well. So, into the resolved ones, and apparently not very many. Apparently, no one's been fixed in these mistakes. So, and that's what running course feels like, and I think I'm doing actually very well for time. I've been speaking too fast. So that's what I'm trying to kind of what we call events. We're saying this is a thing that you're hosting. That's the kind of primary way that we use it, and so that's kind of what the site's designed to do. So you're hosting a thing, so you're providing material and markup and stuff like that for them to work through. So you've been through all that on the website. And you can see their submissions, etc. So if you want to deploy yourself, I swear that I thought this would take longer. If you want to deploy the site yourself, it is all in the docs of how to do it. And we personally deployed FlyDI just via Get Faction. That's just what we do. But there is also a doc was file in there as well. University of Southampton has their own version of this, so they're the other university that I'm aware of that is using this as their training platform, and they deployed just on a server in their basement somewhere with the Docker flows. And so the kind of the containers you need for a full deployment are the Next.js container, obviously for the back end, and for the web pack as well. Nginx, obviously, Postgres, obviously, and Quadrant is the thing that's covering that search. If you want, both the methods of how to deploy it on the clouds, on fly, but obviously tailor it if you want to put it on EC2 or whatever, it will be very hard for you to do. All the methods for that are in the docs, which are linked on the sidebar. When you're deploying, you need to configure it, and that's done again. I think it's simple, but I made the thing, so I'm biased. But you do two things. There's a template YAML. Template YAML kind of gives you your deployment specific sort of variables. So things like what you want the title of the site to be, what you want the favicon of the site to be, what you want the opening crawl to be, and most importantly, where your material is hosted, which I probably should have put higher up on the page. But down here, you can see the syntax for that. You basically you can call this whatever you want. You can go A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, whatever. But what's important is you give them a name and you give them a path, and the path is like GitHub.com/whatever. And what happens when you deploy the site is it pulls each of those repos one at a time, and so the kind of deployment process is an extra step. Like we use Yarn for the build tool, and so like Yarn pull that to grab all the repos, and then Yarn build, and it will go through every single file that's been pulled into this material folder. Every single file it will go through and build this kind of this server side generated text. So like if you're not familiar with Next.js, that's one of the kind of types of pages you can have as the SSG pages, and that all those marked on pages we looked at, like sections of teams and courses, all of them are these SSG pages. The other thing to do is the more technical stuff. All the end bars need to set. So you need to obviously set things like your database URL, your secret. We do login via Mixdoc. That's something I should have mentioned when I was saying come try this thing. Is you have to log in to try the thing, and you just log in via GitHub. But you can use whatever. It's just using OAuth. So use whatever OAuth provider you want. And we have it. We're trying to hook it up to the Oxford single sign-on, but that's been an absolute pain because they use SAML and we want to use OAuth, and so I put a middleman in the middle. But getting central IT to do anything to do with this is just such a pain. So that's been 6 months. That's been an action item on every group meeting. What the progress on the efforts for this? So because we'd like to reuse that strategy for all our other web apps. How convenient would that be to be able to sign in with your Shibboleth login or your SSO login to all your OAuth apps? That'd be really cool. But as it stands, you can only use out-of-the-box OAuth stuff. Very easy to do. Just uncomment some lines or add your own OAuth solutions. Or just use GitHub, in which if you're just using GitHub, you need to put the GitHub secrets in there, obviously. The other thing as well, the analytics goes in there as well. I'll talk about that in a second, but also the search stuff. There's quite a few environment variables to the search because the search is really complicated. And that was that final container that was on this page, the Qt quadrant. And quadrant is a combination of a ClickHouse vector database and a quadrant server. And what we're doing there is we're doing vector embeddings. I think it's here. Yeah. So here's a little animated GIF of it doesn't play, of course, because it's open office. But you saw I did demonstrate the search live. Is that what's happening is that when you deploy the site, or if the material has changed at midnight, so dynamically it's pulling the repos of the Git pool. So if you update your latest release on Git, then it will fetch the new course material. You don't have to rebuild the site. The site rebuilds, as the content gets stale. But also at midnight, it checks if the material has changed, and if it does, it takes all your material, chunks up into every time there's a title or a problem, like a call-out directive or something like that. It chunks that up into a block of text. We feed it into OpenAI to get a vector embedding, like a 1536 dimensional vector. And then when you type a search query in, we also send that off to OpenAI, get the same vector embedding, and we look for code line similarities. So that way we're not actually matching on specific words, we're matching on the meaning of words, which I think is a much more effective search. One of the things that the Fortran satellite thing I overheard people talking about is how the search on the Fortran Lang site was giving stuff that didn't really align with what you'd expect to get from that search result. So, this is one of the ways you can improve your search. So that was really fun to do, even if it perhaps not the best use of your time. How successful we've been. I say 56 training courses run at the moment, but that's wrong. It finished last week. And actually we're up to 60. I think RSE fund, the one I put in yesterday, the fake one, is the 65th. So we've got 64 training courses we ran. Over 600 students have gone on these courses. And, individual students that is, but some of these students have done multiple courses. And when I say students, we're normally targeting like fellows, like postdocs and fellows is generally who we're getting. People that have got like, need to develop software engineering skills in order to do their postdocs. So that's kind of who we get. And these, they've completed, 1,300 of these events. This is in 18 months, by the way, since I started tracking this stuff. And, they submitted 14,000 odd problems. So each time we're doing roughly 20 problems each, or something like that. I don't know Southampton stats, which brings us on to the next thing, which is this is our analytics website. This is self-hosted by us. And if you want to deploy Gutenberg, we would just hook you onto our analytics. If that's amenable to you, we'll give you an account so you can log in and see your website, which I will be able to see it too, is the trade-off there, because it'd be nice. You get to see your use, but we also get to see the use of the software. If you don't want to take part, don't take part, just post it and never tell us, it's fine too. So yeah, like I said, we've had over 50, this is actually now over 16,000 users it's unique users, since I visited yesterday. It's like 16,200 or something like that, and again in 18 months. So very popular, very low bounce rate, very high visit duration. Obviously, that visit duration is not to be trusted because if you stay scrolling through the same page, it's not going to track that you're still on the website. But for for a random website that's extremely successful, but it's because all our hits are coming direct. They're not. We're getting about 30–40% of traffic from Google. So there are some people coming to, and normally when it's from Google, it's to an individual page. One of the advantages of Next.js we don't know is those SVG pages have a tremendous SEO. So you get quite a lot of traffic from Google to individual pages. But what I'm really keen on is to improve the experience for people that are not on one of these courses. That'd be, a big goal of mine would be for it, because currently all they can do is similar to what they can do in any existing static website, work through the material. They don't have that kind of guided learning experience. They don't have a profile that they can go and see how they're getting on and see what kind of things they completed in a kind of gamified, not gamified way, but kind of endorphin release in a way. So they come from all over the world. Well, not all over the world. Africa's not particularly well covered, but some, and North Korea not particularly well covered, or Greenland apparently. But but actually, surprisingly, because almost all our events are either hosted, we do training to Americans, to people in Singapore, and to the UK, which is why the UK is very bright. So actually, it's showing quite a lot of traffic from people that we're not deliberately targeting coming to us. So University HPC is finished. But Gutenberg is, still there. I'm still motivated to maintain it. We're still actually paid to maintain it, but even if we weren't, I'm still motivated to maintain it. I'm still motivated to, to fix issues that are brought up in our GitHub. I'm still interested if someone comes to me and says, I really want to use it, but this is the thing holding me back. Then I want to fix that for you so you can use it. Like we were talking earlier today, open source science, how reproducible code, it would be a waste of time to make a tool that isn't useful for others. So yeah, and as well as the course material as well. You're welcome to obviously use the University HPC course material if you want, or write your own, or a combination of both. What I didn't mention when I was looking at this thing here is that you can add as many. I keep pointing at that screen down there. You can add as many of these as you want. As many of those as you want. So there are two follow-up projects to University HPC. One is Drift, one is Charted. I discovered they've got stickers. I don't know where we are actually. Upstairs somewhere. One of the stalls, they've got stickers for these up there. Yeah, the EPCCC stall. There you go. So if you want a sticker, Drift, we've got our funding continues Drift, which is a collaboration in Edinburgh, ourselves and Imperial, I believe. But there's another collaboration, Charted, which is tackling kind of similar things. That we're not part of that anymore. So I think that's all I have to say. So I think I finished like miles before time. Maybe not, but that's all I have.
Thank you. We've got a few questions. First question: what kind of support do you offer to organizations migrating their materials to Gutenberg?
Yeah, loads of support. So if they want to, loads of support if they're contributing to our course materials repo. If they just open a PR and we'll help. I'll help, if not someone else. Some things have kind of stalled up, but we had someone who wanted to offer a migration to AWS cloud support thing, and from the time base that they started working on it, we were talking about it took about 6 weeks, 8 weeks before we had that merged in off the site, and then because we were under time pressure because the course was happening at some point, and so we were able to get that done like really quickly. Plus, also, like we're not necessarily looking for you to have a perfect product before it goes on. But we're not saying this has to be like, ideal, because we find mistakes all the time. Like you can look at the commit history of the course material thing, always fixing typos and code lines that perhaps didn't do what they said, or perhaps things have moved on. Like, this is not how you do that specific thing anymore. And so if you want to keep your material on there, it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it works, like as long as the markdown is valid and the front matters is there so that the site can parse the things it needs to. And again, not all that front matters is necessary. You don't need learning outcomes. You don't need tags, that kind of thing. You don't need all that stuff. As long as you don't even need depends on as well. You just need to have basically the name and if there's an attribution as well. Yeah, so I'm happy to, I think us, me and several other of the RSEs at Oxford are happy to kind of help you migrate stuff.
Thank you. Next question. It looks like users have to be logged in with GitHub do you plan to support any other authenticators? For example, if I wanted to run a course for just staff at my uni, how do I facilitate?
Yeah, so as long as you have an OAuth link, then you can do that. I mentioned this before, as we're trying to get the Oxford SSO to work. That's a challenge because there's no OAuth, and if your university is a UK university, you'll have the same trouble. But actually, the hope is if we get the solution working, you should just be able to change the identity provider and point it to your own institution. And if you didn't know, there's a centralized approval process for this for UK RFE or something like that. And so actually, if we got our single sign-on middleman working, then you would be able to add your identity provider to it. And so that can work. There are other solutions. For example, if you use like Microsoft Azure, you can limit it to university emails. You can have them SSO with Azure, but limit them to emails like at, Imperial or whatever, at UCL, and that way you could restrict it to just your university. Obviously, courses are locked down as well. People can't just join a course; they have to have the enrollment key, or be added manually. And so, in that case, you can't stop people. You can't stop people making an account with GitHub, but just having an account doesn't give you any interactivity with the site if you're not enrolled in a course. So I hope that answers that question.
How hard would it be to connect already rendered lesson material pages, for example, from Markdown to Sphinx to HTML, with the rest of your system?
Yeah, so we can't. There's not really a path for embedding HTML in any way that's pleasant. I mean, you could put stuff in like iframes or something like that, and that would be very easy to do. But I don't see that as like you would still have to to get the rest of the metadata stuff. You would still have to make that Markdown file, but what you put in that Markdown could be HTML. You can put HTML in Markdown if you belong to put in the correct directive, and you can put iframes in there, which allow you to post other kind of website content in there. But I'm not necessarily sure that's a particularly good. Like I don't think we're necessarily. It'd probably be best if you just compare it to Markdown. Yeah.
A technical question. Why do you need to override basically all of the Markdown elements when converting to the dynamic side?
Yeah, to add functionality, basically, things like copyable code blocks would be some functionality that's because normally you would get a code block and that would be rendered as a React element. In React, but we want to add specific functionality to that. The other thing would be embedded comment threads, for example. When you make one of these comment threads by highlighting text, that is functionality that's added to the paragraph component. So we're overriding the paragraph component in React, and similarly, that same functionality is mixed into titles and to lists as well. So that that's what I mean by what we're saying is when the way that works in React Markdown, you say is when you see a list, then call this function. And you can put arbitrary JavaScript or type. It's written then the arbitrary TypeScript code in that function, as long and the return of that will be what will appear in the DOM. So that's what I mean by that. Hopefully that answers the question.
The next question is still an important one. Can you remind us of the test enroll?
Well, it's RSEcon 25, all lowercase, all one words. RSEcon 25. So I'll leave that event up there. So if you want to play around, then you can play around.
Got time for a couple more questions. If we deploy our own version of this, does it include the lesson material currently on the Oxford one, or is that stored in a different database?
Yeah, so the material is all stored on a different GitHub repo rather than a different database. And so all you need to do is pull that repo, which again is fully open source. So take it with you and destroy it, chop it up, do what you like with it, if you want to, or just use it out of the box. Just make a copy of it and you'll be fine.
Right. When you pull material from a single GitHub repo, is that becoming a section, a theme, or a course?
Yeah, so you have to have all of them. That's the kind of one thing that unfortunately appear to be locked into, is that you kind of have to provide, you'll see it if you go to the course material repo, you'll see it that it's folder based. So you have each folder is a theme, and within them, each folder is a course, and within them, file detection, and with an index in each one as well for the material that appears in that thing. So you're kind of unfortunately locked into that hierarchy. But if you only have like one course you want to present, you could just have that one folder with the theme, the course, and then the section stuff in there. That's all you need to put in there. You don't have to construct any kind of, large amount of material in order to use it.
Maybe one or two more questions. I understand if we were to deploy our own server, we could cherry pick existing public repos and link them to our course offer. Is there an attempt to compile and maintain a list of compatible?
Yeah, I can give you the list off the top of my head. The compatible list of material is that course material repo. There's no others. Other than I maintain a test repo in my own GitHub for the CI jobs on the Next.js site. Just so I can park that, just to make sure I can park the test repo. But there's no, as part of the note, I put this in because I realized it was going to be harder and harder to add the functionality we didn't add it earlier. And so I put in the ability to cherry pick repos in the hopes of future proofing it, rather than it's not actually permanently used by anyone as far as I know.
What other RSE related initiatives have you engaged with? The carpentries and direct competencies framework come to mind as having lots of overlaps.
Yeah, there's lots of overlaps. We've engaged with carpentries in the sense that we talk to them about stuff, in the sense that we use some of their lessons. There are overlaps. Yeah, I don't know what to say to that other than, yeah, there are overlaps, but we're hopefully doing something different with the fact that, it may not be clear enough, but we're trying to host a dynamic site, like a web 2.0 site, rather than a static page that you work through, a lesson plan that you work through.
Thank you, Alasdair.